Hey guys, welcome back. Let's get started, right? So, brief outlook of the market. We know that the market was consolidating sideways in this wedge. It broke, and then we've been having an intense sell-off. So, at first, I was considering an ABC scenario, but I will get back to that, right? It's looking more likely that this is either a way forward to the downside, right? Where this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or it's likely a scenario where you can see that we're going to do an ABC and WXY. So let's get started with the first one, right? This is the most favorite scenario for the bears, right? In which case you can see that once we broke this consolidation, there was a wedge here that could have acted as support, but we broke right through the wedge. So what I am looking for, even in this wave 5, is this was a truncated wave 5 in a wave C, right? This is your 1, this is your 2. You can see that we pretty much sold off to the 3.618 FIP, right? So this area, right, we are pretty oversold on multiple time frames. So till FOMC, at least, I am kind of expecting a small bounce, right? We probably, as you can see, this is a channel acting as support and resistance. So the two probabilities are if 3805 breaks, then we're probably going to retest 3752, right? And bounce from here. However, if this level, the 3.618 fib holds, then we could, again, this is the center line, right? We could go retest the center at 3930 before it comes down lower for the wave 5. So that's scenario number 1, right? Number 2 is, if I zoom out, you can see this green channel, again, has held this support, resistance, support, right? Didn't even make it to resistance. Again, briefly broke it, right? Support, went higher, right? Again, support went higher. So this area could propel, the market again. If it's in a WXY, right? And a bigger, again, hold on. This is a bigger WXY count. Where this is your W, this is your X, we're in a Y, right? And even in that, right, this entire thing, you can see that this was your W, right? Oh, let me do this. This entire thing was your W, this was your X, and again, we're coming down for a Y. Again, I wouldn't put this count in high probability, right? I would definitely put us doing a wave 5 lower and higher probability, but you can't rule this out either, right? And I will go back to the ABC chart pattern that I showed you earlier, right? We could break a little lower and then bounce for that wave B, right? To go retest this breakdown. And again, this would assume we pump towards FOMC before we come lower. So let's go back to this pattern, right? So although this chart is not ruled invalid, right? Because B waves are allowed to break the previous low, and B waves, this is something known as an expanded flat, right? This is your A, B breaks the prior low before we move up for a C. So I would definitely rule this. I'm sorry, I know there are a lot of lines, but I would definitely rule this a higher probability than an ABC, because if you can see the structure here, right, you can see how deep X wave went. And in this way, we barely even made it, right? If I flip the bottom of this to the top of this, you can see that we only made it to the 0.5, and ideally we moved to the 0.8. So the previous chart that showed an expanded flat, right, where this broke the prior low before it moves higher, would make a WXY count and higher probability than an ABC. So again, you have multiple versions, right? I do put it in lower probability, but everyone's pretty bearish. So this could definitely be a trick scenario where, the break of the trend channel, right, where most people like me would have expected a bounce, could have, fooled the bulls, right? And then we just get bought up for a giant C wave. Again, I would definitely, again, bears have the upper hand. So you definitely have to consider the bearish scenario, right? Where any bounce will likely go lower for wave 5, right? I would think that 3700, 3650 would get tested, but I would, with FOMC, with expiration, OPEX coming up, I would not rule out, a B wave bounce or an expanded flat all the way to 4,300. I would definitely be prepared for all scenarios. All right, with that being said, right, let's go to this week's watch list. So the first thing I have is Pfizer. Right, the reason for Pfizer is that we've spoken about this channel many times, right? If I go to the daily chart, you can see pre-market, we're pretty much sitting on the support, right? And this channel is a 2-year channel that has held the support on numerous occasions. So I do expect it to bounce here, but my play is not bounce, right? I wanted to put this on the watch list because I wanted you guys to see the bounce and I wanted to see it fail, right? If the bounce fails, I mean, it could directly just fail and go lower, right? That's definitely possible. But I would, if I see the index is bouncing a little bit, I would expect it to try to overtake the trend line. So either it's going to fail and then it's going to retest and come lower, right? Or it's going to try to get back into the trend line, fail the bounce, and then break. So you're going to have to watch out for both scenarios. Ideally, I would want you to wait for the bounce to fail and then short it again versus, trying to short here, might get caught in a bounce and then coming lower. But anyway, big picture, right? When it breaks 49 decisively, right? You can see that it's broken this 2-year channel, and I do expect it to retest 47.5 and 43, right? Let's go to the weekly chart, right? Where's the weekly 200-day? I know this is super bearish. The weekly 200 is at like 40, but ultimately when it breaks, I would expect it to come down lower to that level. So that's the reason I have Pfizer on this week's watch list, right? I think though every time it touches it, the channel gets weaker, and you can see it's made lower high, lower high, lower high, got massively rejected at resistance. So that's why I have put on Pfizer on this week's watch list. The next one is XLE. So the reason for that is on XLE, TradingView keeps messing up my channel, so I'm gonna have to redo it again. So anyway, the reason for that on XLE is bigger picture. You can see that it has, kind of been in the sideways channel, right? This is a sideways channel, and we broke over it, right? We briefly consolidated and it took off. So again, that doesn't mean that it can't break, right? It just means that if XLE, right, you can see if this is wave 1, we went to a wave 3 extension before we came lower, and right now we're sitting, right? Again, let me show you what fib we're sitting in, right? You can see that if the low of wave 2, the high of wave 3 is taken, we're sitting at the 0.618 fib pre-market. So for me, as long as you can see here, as long as this level holds, right, I can definitely see it going higher for wave 5, right, all the way to 97. So that's the reason I have calls on there, right? Again, that doesn't mean that it can't break, right? This could have easily been the top, and we could definitely come down to 76. But so 2 versions are, as long as this level holds, you can definitely see a wave 5 move higher this week, right? Let's say if it starts to break below 84, then it's likely you can play puts to 76. So those are your bull and bear versions on XLE. The next one I have is UNG. So this UNG chart, right, I've had it for months, way before, right? I had this chart drawn, like the C wave to 31 when it was at like 12, 13 bucks. So that's the reason I feel confident that this could have been the end of this wave and we move lower. So that's the reason I bring this up when I do this chart, is it helps with my confidence level that a temporary top could be in for UNG given how extended it is, right? And you can see this is also the rising wedge and it's trying to break it lower. So that's the reason I have UNG puts on this week's watch list. I do think 25.21 at minimum could be tested if this is an ABC. If it's a wave 4, I think 21 could be tested. So that's why I have UNG puts on this week's watch list, right? The next one I have is NVDA. And so the reason I have calls for this is not because, again, and of ABC could happen, right? But what I am more looking forward to is, as I mentioned, whether you were bull or bear, I do, even if we tend to dump the first hour of Monday, I do think you will see that wave 4 bounce. And I kind of wanted to take advantage of that wave 4 bounce, right? So that's the reason I have NVDA calls over 162. I do think today's gap could be filled, right? And we retest 173 at least. So that's the reason I have calls over 172. Target 170, 173 with a stop at 154. Again, be careful that it could, try to do that 1 hour, 2 hour move down on Monday before it bounces, right? Ideally, I'd wait for it to break 160 to 163 before playing calls on it. So that's the reason I have NVDA calls on there. The next one is crowd. The reason for crowd is you can see it's kind of in a bearish sideways channel, right? You can see it's sideways in this channel where this is your ABC. So obviously same as Pfizer, I do think we'll bounce here, but I'm looking for this bounce to fail, right? Fail and break this previous demand resistance turn demand zone, right? So if it bounces and breaks 155, then I think crowd can definitely retest like 140s, 130s, right? Probably 120s. So that's the reason I have crowd puts on here, right? Ideally, I'd watch for the bounce to fail and then take the short position. Then that and last one is Microsoft. Again, on Microsoft, right? Either it's an ABC or it's definitely going to have a wave 4 bounce, right? A wave 4 bounce would ideally look something like this, right, before it comes down lower. So I just wanted to take advantage of the bounce, right? So that's the reason I have calls over 248. We'll try to fill the gap, right? I think it will try to retest 255 before it goes down lower. And if it breaks over 257, right, then I think it can definitely try to retest 270. So I wanted to take advantage of that. And that's the reason I have Microsoft calls on there. So thank you so much. I'll see you guys next week.